Hello and welcome to my patch notes rundown for the 19th of May. This week's update introduces a nerf to how AFK Dwarf traders are with the recently added Oblivious perk, as well as some other minor PVM fixes and additions. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Necroplasm disassembly quantity has been increased from 1 to 20. They will still give the same amount of components at the same rate, but at the expense of 20 times the resources. Dwarf traders' base damage when failing a pickpocket has been increased from a flat 10 to flat 10 plus 3% of current health. With the newly added Oblivious Invention perk, the damage received would be increased to a flat 30 plus 9% of current health, which means that with no sustainability, a player would eventually die. This nerf was to be expected and has made an impact on how AFK this method can be, even though the XP rates remain the same. Using current health damage was an interesting choice as the damage will significantly drop when the player is at lower health. Now, there are 3 consistent healing sources that players can use. The first is a bunny, which can potentially allow for full AFK, but it hinges on the success rate. Let's say the player is on 1 hit point before the bunny up heals them. They would need to successfully pickpocket 8 out of the next 13 pickpockets to survive. This doesn't include damage negations like Crystal Mask, but ultimately players would need a 62% success rate, and this danger will be constant since they can get unlucky and easily die if they're fully AFKing. The second option is queuing the regeneration ability with the use of the Persistent Rage Archaeology Relic, which passively generates adrenaline since players aren't technically in combat. This is a pretty safe option, but it does require players to click every few minutes rather than once every 15 minutes. The third option is to again use Persistent Rage, but to use the adrenaline on Ice Asylum. But the downside of this ability is it has a 5-minute cooldown and it only has a healing pool of 300% of a player's total hit points. So if there are a ton of players, they'll barely get any individual healing. Players could organize a group of 6 to pickpocket while fully AFK and split payment for an extra player to drop an Ice Asylum every minute by teleporting to War's Retreat, using the altar, using the Adrenaline Crystal, teleporting to Keldergrim with a Luck Ring, dropping an Ice Asylum at Dwarf Traders and repeating this. However, it's important to note that Ice Asylum does not heal Iron Man. Ultimately, the best form of effective healing is by reducing the chance of taking damage, by increasing success rate with notable effects like Camouflage Outfit, Crystal Mask, Light Form, and Aura. The cave in the Fort Throne 3 Grove can now be accessed. Fix an issue where the Sign of Death would instantly phase certain bosses. I don't really know much about this bug specifically, but I assume players would skip phases by using reflect damage, which has a history of being able to skip mechanics and phases, infamously at Yakumaru on release with the use of Group Vengeance. Added additional titles for completing unorthodox and perfect achievements. I don't really like the fact that these titles are gold, as gold titles are meant to be reserved for prestigious or major achievements. Instead, I think they should be a shade of their respective boss title log, and maybe have a gold title for players who have completed all unorthodox and perfect combat achievements. The Black Flames during the Zamorak encounter now target the player's last location before they teleport to the Infernus. Prior to this update, there was a bug that would occur when players would teleport to Infernus with the extra action button as the Flames of Zamorak, the melee slam mechanic, started. If Zamorak targeted the player teleporting in with the Black Flames, it would draw a line of Black Flames from the Infernus portal, which is the entrance to the arena, all the way down the middle towards the 3rd pad. However, now no Black Flames spawn at all if the player being targeted teleports into Infernus. This isn't a severe bug as there's no point in abusing it and it'll probably make the fight harder. It would be situationally beneficial to be able to do it on phase 5 and 6 due to the high damage, but players are blocked from entering Infernus because the Rune of Destruction is active. The Obliteration special attack healing reduction on Kezalam during its phase transition has been reduced from 100% to 50%. fixed an issue that prevented dragging prayers onto the action bar when any prayer was active. Fun little fact, they didn't completely fix this, but extended the timer that the drag disappears from 0.6 seconds to roughly 9 seconds, but obviously this is good enough for situations where players are already in a boss encounter and need to switch their action bar prayers. And that's it for this week's patch notes. I'm pretty interested in what method players will settle on for dwarf traders, and it's good to see that they're finally fixing age-old boss mechanic bugs. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you for watching and take care.